Her future matters. Yours never did. My dad said it loud enough for the whole room to freeze. Conversations cut off mid-sentence, the overhead lights flickering as every face shifted toward me. My sister hid a smile behind her straw. My mother kept cutting her steak, pretending the moment didn't exist. I didn't defend myself. I didn't even blink. I just tightened my grip on the folder resting against my thigh, the one they all assumed was irrelevant. They thought his words would break me in front of them. They just didn't realize who else was listening that night. I learned early that silence was easier for everyone. It kept the house steady. It kept the peace from cracking. It kept me in the place they expected, quiet, useful, invisible. When I was 8, Tessa threw a tantrum over a toy. She wanted something I had saved birthday money for. She screamed until her voice went hoarse. Dad walked in, took one look at her red face, then at me, and said, "Give it to her. You're the older one. Act like it." He didn't ask what was fair. He didn't even ask if it was mine. He just held out his hand. I remember placing the toy into his palm, my fingers slipping away slowly like I was learning how to let go of ownership without making a sound. Tessa skipped away. No one looked back. By middle school, the pattern wasn't spoken anymore. It was understood. When I brought home straight A's, I set the report card on the counter, waiting for someone to notice. Tessa barged in minutes later, waving flyers for her dance recital. Mom squealed, Dad clapped the flyers, got taped to the fridge. My report card slid under a stack of grocery coupons and stayed there for weeks. One afternoon, I found it bent a ring of coffee at the corner. I didn't say anything. I just smoothed the paper flat and tucked it into a folder in my room. Holding it felt like proof that something I did mattered, if only to me. High school made it worse. I picked up a part-time job at a diner, saving tips in a jar under my bed. It wasn't much crumpled bills, coins that smelled like metal and grease, but it was mine. I planned to use it for college applications, the ones no one else encouraged me to fill out. Then one Saturday morning, I came home to find the jar empty. Mom stood at the kitchen sink, washing dishes as if nothing had changed. When I asked, she didn't look at me. She just said, "Your sister needs new shoes for her competition. You'll manage. You always do." My throat tightened, but I nodded. Arguing never worked. It only made me the villain in my own house. Dad had a way of making Tessa's ambitions sound like destiny, and mine sound like inconvenience. If she wanted a ride to practice, I drove. If she wanted spending money, I figured it out. If she failed at something, someone else was blamed. If I slipped even once, the whole disappointment shifted onto me. I learned to anticipate needs before they were spoken to, apologize for things I didn't do to disappear before I irritated anyone. Responsibility became second nature, not because I was mature, but because they insisted I carry what she dropped. There were nights I sat in the hallway listening to muffled laughter from the living room. They'd be watching a movie, or celebrating something Tessa accomplished, or planning her next audition. I'd hover by the stairs, waiting for an invitation that never came. Sometimes Dad would glance my way, then pull the door halfway closed, blocking me from sight. I'd stand there a moment longer until the sound of their joy felt like static in my chest, then turn away. The worst part wasn't the favoritism, it was how normal it became. How every slight, every dismissal, every expectation that I'd handle it softened into routine. I stopped asking to be seen. I stopped expecting fairness. I stopped believing there was space for me at any table, family or otherwise. Looking back, there wasn't one moment that broke me. It was the slow carving away of worth, year after year, until I learned the one lesson they needed me to understand. I wasn't meant to take up space in that house. And for a long time, I didn't. The morning of the interview felt different. Quiet, steady, almost careful with me. I woke before the sun steamed my blazer, laid the folder on my bed, rehearsed answers under my breath. For once, the silence in the house wasn't heavy. It felt like the day might finally bend in my direction. Then Tessa appeared at my door, sipping an iced drink, sunglasses still on, though we were indoors. "I need you to take me to the mall by noon," she said, like she was ordering a ride service. "I can't," I answered, zipping my portfolio. "My interview is at 12:30. She blinked, slowly confused, not by my words, but by the fact I thought they mattered. "Take me first. Just call them and move it." I stared at her. "I'm not canceling my job interview just to drive you to the mall." The sentence hung in the space between us, unfamiliar, like speaking a language this house didn't recognize. Her face tightened. She didn't argue. She just said, "I'll tell Dad." He arrived less than 2 minutes later, footsteps, heavy jaw set like he'd been waiting years for a reason to explode. He didn't ask. He didn't listen. He just pointed at me. "What's this I'm hearing? You're refusing to take your sister where she needs to go. I have an interview," I said quietly. "It's important." He laughed, cruel loud, the kind that fills a room and empties it at the same time. And then he said it. "Her future matters, yours never did." The words hit before his hands did. He shoved me so hard my back slammed into the hallway wall. The picture frame cracked behind me, glass skittering across the floor. My shoulder throbbed. Tessa watched from the counter, chewing gum like she was passing time. Mom walked in, saw me on the ground, and sighed as if I'd spoiled her morning. "Why do you always start something? No one helped me stand. No one asked if I was hurt." Dad just stepped closer, blocking the doorway, waiting for me to fold. But something in me shifted, quiet and final. I picked up my keys, brushed glass from my sleeve, and walked toward the door. I felt him move to block me again. This time I didn't stop. This time I walked out. The air outside was cold enough to sting, but it was the first breath that didn't feel borrowed. I walked down the driveway, the cracks in the concrete blurred under my feet, Dad's shouting fading behind the door he couldn't reach me through anymore. I didn't look back. I kept walking until the house was out of sight, and the shaking in my hands wasn't fear, it was the shock of choosing myself. Harper pulled up exactly when she said she would. A silver SUV engine, humming low window, rolling down to reveal the same expression she used the night I cried in our college dorm for the first time. Steady, alert, already planning. "What did they do?" she asked as I slid into the seat. I buckled in. They tried to stop me from going. He shoved me. He said I paused, swallowing the echo of the words. He said my future never mattered. She didn't gasp. She didn't ask why. She just gripped the steering wheel tighter. "Then we're going to make sure they can't touch your future again." The drive to downtown felt unreal. My blazer was wrinkled from his hands. There was a faint scratch across my shoulder. My chest still ached where the air had left it. But Harper kept her voice calm, going over practice questions, adjusting my collar, handing me water like we were doing something ordinary instead of rebuilding the entire trajectory of my life. The lobby of the tech company smelled like polished stone and cold air. Fluorescent lights reflected off the glass walls, making everything look sharper, cleaner, like a place where people were allowed to start over. I sat through the interview with a stillness I didn't recognize. 47 minutes. 3 interviewers. I answered every question like I'd been preparing for years, which in a way I had. When I stepped back outside, Harper smiled. "Told you." But my phone ruined the moment, buzzing relentlessly with notifications. Messages from Tessa, one after another. "You ruined everything. Dad's furious. You better come home now. If I miss this meetup because of you, don't bother showing your face again. Hope that stupid interview spits you out." I typed one line back, "I'm not coming home." We drove to Harper's apartment, a small, warm space overlooking a quiet street. She handed me a spare towel, a clean t-shirt, and told me to breathe. In the bathroom mirror, I saw the bruise rising on my shoulder, blooming like someone else's fingerprint. For a moment, I felt 8 again, 12 again, 16 again, waiting for someone in that house to care. But they never had. And this time, I wasn't waiting. Later that night, Harper entered the living room with her laptop open, face pale, not frightened, but furious. "You need to see this," she said. She turned the screen toward me. An internal HR chat, a forwarded recruiter memo, a voicemail transcription. It took me a second to understand it was about me. Then the words snapped into place. Her father called, reported her as unstable, said she attacked him, warned us she's dangerous to hire. My ribs went numb. Dad hadn't just tried to control me. He tried to erase me before I even got a chance to begin. "He called them again tonight," Harper said quietly. Left another voicemail. They forwarded it because he referenced his job title and the board he sits on. That's a policy violation. Several, actually. She tapped the folder she'd already printed. Recruiter notes, voicemail recordings, Tessa's texts. Timeline of interference. He crossed lines he legally can't cross, she said, and we're going to use exactly that. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. The emotion was colder than either. It settled low in my stomach, heavy and precise, like the first moment a blade touches skin. What do we do? I asked. Harper opened a blank document, clean, clinical, the type where no one could accuse you of exaggeration. First, she said, we file with corporate compliance at the tech company. Everything neatly attached, everything factual. Then we send a formal note to the firm your dad works with. They can't ignore it. I nodded. We began. Typed, saved, attached, documented, filed, indexed, forwarded. No emotion, just the steady sound of keys, the quiet click of the mouse, the hum of the heater under the window. While we worked, Dad called my phone 6 times. Each voicemail angrier, less coherent, more threatening. I didn't listen to them. Harper saved everyone. At midnight, the final email was ready. Subject line, formal complaint. External interference with hiring process. Attachments 8 files. CC'd HR compliance legal. The oversight committee of Dad's firm. Harper hovered her finger above the trackpad. You ready? I thought of the wall. The crack in the frame. The bruise on my shoulder. The years of silence. The sentence he delivered like a verdict. Her future matters. Yours never did. Yes, I said. Send it. She clicked. The email left the outbox and something in me eased. Not joy, not triumph. Just a slow exhale I'd been holding for years. This time I said quietly, I'm not fixing what they break. Harper nodded. Good. Because this time they're the ones who won't recover from it. Outside, the street was dark and still. Inside, for the first time in my life, everything was finally moving. The first response came sooner than either of us expected. 24 hours after Harper hit, send an email arrived from the tech company's compliance team. The subject line was short, almost emotionless, but it shifted the air and the entire apartment acknowledged. Under review, they requested a call. Not with me, with their internal board. Harper read the message twice, then looked up. They're taking this seriously. They have to. For the next several days, everything moved in a slow, quiet avalanche. Small at first, then impossible to stop. A second email landed in my inbox, this time from HR. They apologized, not the polished, templated kind. This one had weight. It referenced concerning interference, ethical breaches, and a need to ensure candidate safety. Someone from HR added a line in bold, no further calls from non-applicants will be accepted. It was the first boundary anyone had ever drawn on my behalf. 2 days later, the tech company reached out to my dad's firm. Not privately, not politely. They sent a compliance inquiry requesting clarification about why a senior advisor from their team had contacted another corporation's HR line multiple times, misrepresenting a candidate and referencing his board position while doing so. Corporate language is its own kind of violence, quiet, undeniable, leaving no space to wriggle out. The inquiry triggered another, and another. By the end of the week, Dad's firm had opened its own review. Not optional, mandatory. Harper showed me the notice when it leaked internally. A short message forwarded between employees. External complaints received. Advisory privileges temporarily suspended, pending investigation. Suspended. One word. But it hit harder than anything he ever threw me into. I didn't call home. I didn't need to. The silence from the house stretched across days, tightening like a rope. Then Mom broke it. She called in the afternoon, voice sharp around the edges the way it always got when something slipped beyond her control. Your father is in trouble, she said. No greeting. No question if I was okay. Someone reported him. They're saying he violated policies. We need you to fix this. Tell them you exaggerated or misunderstood or something. I stared at the phone screen while she talked. The laundry machine hummed in the background. The sun hit the floor in a quiet, warm line. The world around me didn't match her urgency at all. I'm not fixing anything, I said. Mom inhaled sharply. Bailey, listen, no, I said. You listen. I didn't do this to him. He did this to himself. She tried crying next. It sounded tired. Rehearsed like an old script worn thin. I ended the call. The next week brought the blow they never expected. A letter, short, formal, and personal, arrived at the house. I didn't see it, but Harper later received a photo from a mutual acquaintance inside the firm. The letterhead alone told the story. Effective immediately. Contract terminated. Breach of ethical standards. Removal from external advisory committee. This was the everything they'd thought they held over. Me connections influenced the network they'd flaunted to justify every act of cruelty. Gone with a single investigation. Dad's nameplate was taken off his office door by noon. Someone saw it and whispered. Someone else reported seeing him leave the building early, shoulders tight. Face red humiliation leaking from him like heat. Mom called again that night. This time her voice wasn't sharp. It was small. "We don't know what to do," she said. "It wasn't supposed to go this far. You have to help us, please." In the past, her panic would have cracked me open, but now it barely reached me. "I'm not the one who pushed this that far," I said softly. "And I'm not the one who's going to pull him out." There was a long silence. A silence she couldn't fill, couldn't twist, couldn't weaponize. "Bailey, please," she whispered. "No," I said. "Not anymore." I hung up. Later that evening, HR from the tech company scheduled a private meeting. The room was small, lined with glass and soft lighting. They apologized again, this time in person. They offered me the job. Full salary, benefits, a relocation package, and a written guarantee that any future interference from outside parties would be treated as harassment. It wasn't the apology that mattered. It was the acknowledgement that my future did matter. Always had. When I stepped out of the building, the city air felt different. Wide, cold, clean. My phone buzzed again. A voicemail from Dad. The tone was unfamiliar, strained, frantic, stripped of the confidence he'd worn all his life. I deleted it without listening. Walking down the street, I realized something simple, something undeniable. I didn't take anything from them. They were the ones who handed it all away. The first morning in my new apartment felt unreal. No raised voices, no footsteps pacing the hallway, no tension coiled in the walls like electricity waiting to strike. Just quiet. Light came in through the thin curtains, soft pale, nothing like the harsh bulbs at home. I stood barefoot on the cool floor, holding a mug Harper had lent me. The steam rose in slow spirals, the air settling around me with a softness I didn't recognize. For the first time, silence didn't feel like punishment. It felt like space. My space. I traced the faint bruise on my shoulder now, only a shadow of itself. It didn't sting anymore. It didn't burn. It simply existed, evidence of a moment that used to define me, now fading into something I could finally walk past. A reminder, not a wound. The city outside was alive, cars humming below, someone shouting good morning across the street, a dog barking into the open air. None of it had anything to do with me, and that was the comfort. I wasn't the center of anyone's anger here. I wasn't the problem to fix. I wasn't the scapegoat or the forgotten one. I was just a person starting over. I opened my laptop to an inbox filled with onboarding documents, schedules for training, welcome messages from people who didn't know me beyond what I had earned. They didn't know my family. They didn't know the walls I'd been thrown into or the years I'd spent invisible. They only knew the work I'd done, the interview I'd passed, the skills I carried. It was strange seeing a future built on my merits alone. Stranger still, realizing how heavy the past had been only once I stepped out from under it. My phone buzzed once on the counter. A text from Mom. "We need to talk." Then another, "Please." I let the screen dim on its own. I didn't owe them an answer. Silence was no longer submission. Now it was a boundary. I took another sip of coffee, watching the morning light brighten the small room. The city felt wide open in a way I'd never known, like every street, every sound, every breath belonged to a life that finally had room for me. For the first time, I wasn't waiting for the next storm. I wasn't preparing for impact. I wasn't bracing myself. I was free. Walking away was the only thing I ever took from them. Every consequence that followed was one they created themselves. Freedom didn't come from winning. It came from refusing to stay where I was never meant to grow. Some doors don't close behind you. They disappear the moment you stop knocking. If this story stayed with you, join our channel for more cold, silent, and cathartic family dramas. Tell us where you're watching from and share the moment you first chose yourself. Your story might be the next one we bring to life.